14.
And Chief Meteorologist David Chanley along with Alex Forbes. We're monitoring Hurricane Helene. You've been watching Fox Weather's coverage. All right, locally, here's what's going on now. The 2 a.m. advisory has it down to 90-mile-an-hour winds, Cat 2 storm, and moving to the north-northeast still at 26. How about this? It's a Cat 2 storm inland in South Georgia, now north of Valdosta. How about that? All right. So we're looking at a lot of rain across the region and more to follow. All the greens flashing. You should know by now that's flash flood warnings. And that is a good chunk of real estate across North Georgia under all those warnings. Look at this heavier rain. Covington, McDonough, Griffin over south of Fayetteville, all pushing off to the west-northwest. Pretty good clip, too. Probably about 40, 50 miles an hour. These are the feeder bands of the tropical system, and we still got a ways to go. Heavy rain right along West Point Lake up through Heard County, Carroll County, moving into east central Alabama. And then we got more rain out here across the northern reaches. Yeah, how about that? Up through the northwest corridor and the northeast mountains getting soaked as well. All these areas have already had several inches of rain with more to follow. In fact, we look at the center of circulation now, as I said, north of Valdosta. Look at all this is going to pinwheeling into parts of middle Georgia and eventually into the metro area. Now we have some issues with some wind. All right, already look at the winds going on there. A little calmer as the center of circulation moves across Valdosta, but around it 30, 40, 50 miles an hour. And we expect that to continue as it makes its way up into here into North Georgia. So watch this now. We'll start the clock. How about perhaps 70-mile-an-hour winds? It's possible out there towards Eatonton and Putnam County. It's certainly in the sweet spot for this center of circulation to kind of move, split the goalpost between Atlanta and Athens, and the wind's really going to be picking up across North Georgia as well, especially up in the mountains as we get into early tomorrow morning, and that's going to run into some tree trouble. Also, this wind now is coming up out of the east, and then eventually in the morning we'll be on the backside of the system. It comes up out of the west and the northwest, and often that change in direction of strong winds can add to the tree limb issue and trees coming down, and we'll see that right on into your Friday morning, and then things get a little bit better by the time we get into Friday afternoon, but still a bit of a breeze going on across the region. So as we put all this into motion, here you go. You get wave after wave. Look at your timeline, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, more wet weather with the wind. Now it starts kind of winding down a little bit once we get into later tomorrow morning or later on Friday morning. Meteorologist Alex Forbes joins me right here in the Fox 5 Storm Center. And Alex, Cat 2 storm still in South Georgia, and you got some information on all the flooding we have going on.
That's right. It's becoming a problem here across the metro area, and we're going to get to that in just a moment. First, I want to show you, David kind of alluded to this just a moment ago. This is the track from the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center. In fact, David, a brand new update. Now a Category 1. This is going to be the 2 a.m. advisory there. Winds of 90 miles an hour. Look at this. The plan is still for the storm to pass very close to Atlanta, the city of Atlanta, as a tropical storm with sustained winds of 65 miles an hour along about 8 a.m. The fact that it is moving at 26 miles an hour is notable for a tropical system, and what's essentially happening is there's two weather systems on either side of it, and it's squeezing it through, kind of like squeezing toothpaste through a bottle. That's why it's moving so quickly. That's not great news for us because that means it's going to be a little stronger when it gets here than it otherwise would be. And if you're looking for the silver lining, it means it gets out of here faster, and we're going to be able to start the cleanup efforts at least a little sooner. So that is the newest advisory there from Helene. And then as we look at this go towards the north, it is going to be out of our hair and up into Tennessee and Kentucky. Here is where we are on the timeline. So getting into that damaging wind threats as we roll our way into the next couple of hours as that center really begins to move in. And the problem is a couple of things. One, we have seen a lot of rain today. So the ground is saturated really over the past 48 hours. The trees still have leaves on top of them, wet leaves now, so they're top heavy. Now you introduce all this wind, even the 40 to 50 mile an hour wind, and that's where you're going to run into some issues, and that's where the power outages are really going to become an issue. Now, we are monitoring some creek and river flooding, or mainly creek flooding here in the city. North Fork Peachtree Creek at Beaufort Highway is in major flood stage. South Fork Peachtree Creek at Johnson Road here in DeKalb is at moderate flood stage. Nancy Creek and Fulton County is in major flood stage, and we want to take you out now to Peachtree Creek and US 41 in Buckhead. That's where Rob DiRienzo is for a check of the conditions there in major flood stage. Rob?
Hey there, Alex. Yeah, we're just offside Northside Drive, and if you know this area, this is a very well-traveled area, but as you can see, it is completely underwater. As you mentioned just a moment ago, this flooding is just going to become a bigger and bigger issue as we make our way throughout the evening and the early morning. I want to take a step out of the way to show you this flooding. This is down Sagamore Drive. As you mentioned a moment ago, Alex, this is Peachtree Creek overflowing and essentially taking over all of Sagamore Drive. Now, I want to show you those creek levels that you were just talking about just a moment ago. You can see how high it is in respect to this bridge right here. It's a pretty serious situation here. And again, the water is kind of flowing around this pump station, and it's just becoming a bigger and bigger creek. I think it's safe to say it's a river at this point. So this is going to be a major concern. This bridge right here on Northside Drive remains open, but that could change throughout the night as these conditions, as we're expecting, will continue to worsen. As you can see, the lights are still on around here, which is the good news, but as the wind picks up, that could quickly change. We're going to continue to monitor it, bring you the very latest on Good Day Atlanta. Back to you guys.
And Rob, I'll pick up the coverage here in Valdosta, where we are now getting a look at some of the damage for the last hour and a half after our 12:30 hit here on Fox 5. We went inside because the eye wall was just too severe. We are now coming out to take a look at the damage. We have this handy dandy light thanks to a very nice person here in Valdosta. I want to point over here. You can take a look. The siding of that building is now gone, ripped apart as the hurricane force strength winds ripped the metal siding off during the height of this storm as that eye wall was pulling through here. I'm going to move the light down just a little. You'll just see all the tree limbs just scattered across the road here, littering all across the sidewalk as well. And as we pan to the left, we're going to pan across. You'll see this sign, this for sale sign. This was in a vacant lot that they're trying to sell. It is no longer in that lot. The wind actually sending it probably about 20 yards from where it should have been, or where it was about maybe 3 or 4 hours ago. And then this is an awning just above that. That was ripped off a building during the height of the storm as the eye wall was moving through this area. And as we continue moving to the left, you'll see this tree over here came crashing down, or at least a limb ripped apart during the severe winds. And as you can tell, I'm having to use a flashlight because it is so dark out here because the power is out. 63,000 people are in the dark according to Lowndes County EMA. They say that they are still seeing tropical storm force winds all throughout this area. I think they just got a report of a gust of like 72 miles per hour within the last 15 minutes or so. We are still seeing wind out here as well. I'm just panning around this light. Not a whole lot of structural damage, thankfully, from what we're seeing in this location, but there's obviously a lot of wind damage to these trees. A lot of cars that were parked here appear to be okay, which is obviously some good news. We do see a lot of police officers out and about. We see one driving through right now. They have their lights on, a lot of emergency officials out here. While most of the severe part of this storm has passed, we are still seeing some wind gusts, a very light rain, which is obviously some good news that things are moving along, and you'll see a gust coming right there, but nothing like what we were seeing earlier at the height of this at about 12:30, when it was just incredibly dangerous for us to be outside. Actually, this sign right here is the reason why we went inside, because it started moving from, so right what you're looking at right there, it was probably right about where my light is, and all of a sudden during that hurricane force wind gust, it just flew across the ground over to here, and that was the point where we said we were no longer safe where we were, because that is our ultimate goal, to tell you what's happening in a location. We were no longer safe. We went inside. We met some very nice people who live here in Valdosta who are riding out the storm right here, who let us in, and we appreciate them as we're trying to tell you what's happening. And it looks like police, Lowndes County EMA, again, 63,000 people in the dark this morning. And it's going to be, unfortunately, a sight that many people are going to have to deal with as we are going to finally get a full scope of the damage once daybreak happens in just a few hours. But from what we're seeing here, it's definitely widespread, and hopefully everyone is able to ride out the storm who was here because of just the significant amount of wind that we saw. I mean, that hurricane force wind was nothing to play around with, incredibly dangerous, and that's why they really have been telling people to stay off the streets, go to a shelter if you're in a mobile home, and that's something that we've been monitoring throughout the evening and now into the morning hours here as the storm system continues to bring wind and rain hurricane to this area. For now, I'm going to send it to Christopher King, who is in Metro Atlanta. Chris, what are you seeing up there?
Well, Tyler, what I'm seeing is a lot of flooding. We're on a bridge. This is Rickenbacker Drive. Now, right down here is the Nancy Creek. It is right up under the bridge. That is how high this water is. That is how bad the flooding is. The creek is overflowing its banks. Now, you may even be able to hear the water rushing by. About a mile and a half away, Lake Forest Lane is blocked off from Wyuka to Barbara Lane. Atlanta closed the street because of a sinkhole. It opened up on the side of the road, and it is a mess all around Fulton County. Rain toppled a tree onto a home. That's on Palisade Road in Buckhead, and we're getting reports of trees down around Fulton County. Fulton County Emergency Management says a flood warning is in effect. Georgia Power is tracking the storm as well. They deployed about 10,000 workers around the state. DeKalb County says road crews cleared debris from flood-prone streets. They also opened 4 severe weather shelters for people who need a place to stay. In Douglas County, they activated their emergency operations center, and they're checking for flooding as well. They opened a shelter at the Douglas County Legacy Arena. Now, of course, as we've all been saying all night, this is a rapidly changing situation. You got to stay with Fox 5 on air and online for the very latest on this, what I'm sure is going to be a pretty ugly storm out here. Let's go now to Fox 5 meteorologist David Chadley. David.
All right, Christopher, thank you very much out there in Nancy Creek, and that is only going to get higher as far as the flooding is concerned, with more rainfall on the way. Show you this, the power outages, it continues to expand, especially across South Georgia, as much as 90% without power in and around Valdosta and northern Florida, right along I-10 and I-75, and this is going to be expanding northbound as the center of circulation makes its trek to the north. And up here in the metro Atlanta area, starting to see a little bit more power outages down towards Upson County. Look at that, that's in the green, about 10 to 15%, and we're going to see that certainly on the rise. So we're going to continue to monitor the situation.